Okay, you're okay.
Hello and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, DolphinRadio is ill and will not be able to join us, but I will be taking over. My name is PlaceHolder Films, at least that's the channel that I run. And tonight we are going to have a set of various topics to discuss. We are also looking for participants, so if you let us know in the chat if you'd like to join, we would be more than happy to have you. So, what should we talk about for our first topic, guys?
Pooh Lady.
Yes, Pooh Lady at Tim Hortons.
Do you want us to watch the video?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh,
Let's
there's a video.
Show the bare butt. You think
carnage.
YouTube's okay with that?
Oh, who cares? It's a butt. We all have one.
No, I'm pretty sure when it's a butt that YouTube's fine with it. They're just not fine with frontal nudity.
Yeah, exactly. Most people don't care about a butt because I mean it's fairly gender neutral. Everybody's got a butt and everybody's seen one. Everybody's wiped a few.
Okay.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
All right. It's a really short video anyway. It's like 20 seconds. And there's no sound to it, unfortunately. I wish I could hear the sound of them going, oh my God, that's disgusting. What the hell? So this woman walked in, asked to use the bathroom, was told no because she's had terrible behavior previously. So she's like a crazy person. It's not a stranger. They know her, obviously. So yeah, here's what happened. She's getting all mad.
She like took clothes off and squatted. Oh,
yeah.
Like a monkey.
That's
Monkeys
disgusting.
do that.
Just a bare butt, like I said. But yeah, that's what happened. So thank God the frontal nudity's all blurred, but yeah.
She just flings it behind the register.
Yeah.
That's literally a thing that animals do. Like what the fuck, man?
Well, remember, humans are animals, but that is particularly disgusting behavior.
They shame Chinese tourists for coming over here and just shitting anywhere like they do in their own country, but someone who's from here just not only just shitting somewhere publicly, but picking it up and flinging at somebody. Like, you need mental help.
Well, here's my take on it for my video. A Tim Hortons employee was stuck in a crappy situation and was wearing a frown as a customer threw her brown.
Nice. That's a good headline for that. But yeah, I don't know. I think if you do something like that, that should be like a mandatory psych eval or something at that point.
Yeah, pretty much. And I'm hoping that they do that and get her some help because, like, holy crap, pardon the pun, Jesus.
Holy crap.
Because she's psycho, obviously. I feel bad for anyone that's in her family. I think she was trying to make a statement because she heard that the washroom thing was a big deal with people doing it. So I think she figured that she'd get attention for it.
Maybe it's just that, but I mean, if you go to a level that you're flinging poo, they could have arrested her then. And they could have taken her and held her for a 72-hour mental evaluation. And that's what should have been done.
Yeah. Oh, I know. So instead, they detained her in the parking lot and released her on a promise to appear in court.
Wow.
Just don't go flinging your poo at more people today, and we'll let you go.
Yeah, I wonder if in the courtroom she's gonna be like insane, probably.
Oh, most likely.
So, what do you guys think of this whole Israel embassy thing?
Do you want to go first?
Well, I was just gonna say I'm not super knowledgeable on it. I do know that we were supposed to have moved to the embassy for forever, so I mean, why not? I'm glad we finally have somebody that went and did it. Like, that's the capital.
The reason why not is because they don't like the U.S. taking a side like that and trying to acknowledge that basically, Jerusalem belongs to the Israelis and not the Palestinians, and that's the whole drama.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily taking a side either way, though, to put the embassy there, because that's the capital, that's where it should be. Their politics between themselves of who it belongs to is their own fucking business.
Right, but the U.S. does have a stance on it, and the official stance is that they stand with Israel. That's their official.
Well, then there you go. Even better. Like, stand behind your stance. Then, my personal stance is I don't give a fuck. That's y'all's own issue to deal with.
I have a rather pessimistic view of this.
Okay.
This entire thing is so stupid and irrational. They're fighting over dirt. They're literally fighting over dirt.
Exactly.
And I know that I can say that from behind the security of a massive country. I get that. It's not what it's about. It's dirt. It's just dirt. Nothing special happened there. That kind of stuff happened everywhere in the world. Theirs just happened to survive.
Well, a lot of people over there believe that Jesus happened there, and that didn't happen everywhere in the world. But
every culture's had messianic figures.
Yes, I know, but
it happens everywhere. They all happen to speak for God.
They've also had both over there, right? They've had, they've had the Christ figure, but then they also had the Muslim figures, and that's
because all these religions stem from the same source.
Yeah, but the Dome on the Rock is something that's been in contention for a long time.
Long since before the Reformation of the State of Israel.
And that's mainly what they're fighting over. Like, that's one of the main things that they want control of.
Well, the reason that they want the Dome of the Rock is because the Dome of the Rock is built where the Temple of David was torn down. And now here's the really sad part. They can never rebuild the Temple of David because they lost the instructions. They no longer know the specific measurements and the specific alignments and everything like that. So they can't even offer burnt sacrifices anymore. So they've been completely cut off as a result of that thing being destroyed for this long.
Yeah, but I mean, if you go with Christianity, once they do, they will attempt to rebuild the Temple of David, and that's a sign that we're in the end of times.
Well, yeah,
they've been saying the end of times.
That's their eschatology, and it's a very interesting part of their religion. And it's really something that I find interesting that the Jews don't really stand up and say, hey, wait a minute, we can't do that. But, it's going to be, I think it's really fascinating to watch these cultures interact in this way.
Yeah, but if you look at Gaza, that's where all the nightclubs are and everything else, and it's that's the least religious place you can imagine. The Wall, that's a different story. The Wailing Wall, that's different. You know that women still aren't allowed to go to the Wailing Wall?
Yep.
Oh man, that makes me want to go.
I want to go there too.
The Hasidic Jews, if they saw you there, they would beat the crap out of you.
Oh, they could try.
Oh, they're vicious, dude. They will straight up, it doesn't matter who you are, they will beat you.
Yeah, those Hasidic guys are assholes. They're not very nice.
Yeah, I don't mind if they try. If they don't mind, I'm going to try back.
If you've ever been there or seen pictures of it or people over there, you should see especially the female officers walking around with those machine guns. They're intimidating.
Oh, hell yeah, dude.
I don't know. I'm just a cunt like
Wonder
that.
Woman was in Gal Gadot, who played Wonder Woman, was in the Israeli military because it's mandatory.
Oh yeah, I know that they're there's some kick-ass people. I mean, I probably would eventually end up with my ass kicked, but I'm gonna give them a hell of a good fight, and I'm gonna touch that fucking wall first.
I want to go there simply for its historical significance. I think I wouldn't be welcome there either, unfortunately, but I think it would be interesting to just observe it.
Well, you couldn't go to the Temple Mount and stuff like that. You have to be a Muslim in order to do that.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, but
it makes me want to do that too. Damn it.
You have to take a test.
Golgotha, or whatever it's called, the hill that supposedly Jesus was crucified on. That people have. That place is so full of bodies now because everybody wanted to get buried there.
Yep.
And now there's no room left on that hill for people to get buried, and it's just really disturbing if you've ever seen pictures of it. It's
Dude, you want to hear something disturbing? Do you know how many dead people are in Disney?
Yeah.
People just go and spread ashes there all the time. They're not supposed to.
This whole Israel thing, there's what is it? I think it's 58. I heard last. We were talking about this on Sparky's thing a little bit.
That puts the I'm going to Disney World ad series in a whole different light.
Oh.
Mm.
So yeah, that whole Israel, I don't know. I understand. I sort of understand, I guess, why people are upset about it, but at the same time, it's like it's just an embassy.
Well,
Well,
we're also
it's-
full within our legal rights to move that embassy into whatever city in Israel we should so desire to put it in.
Yeah,
We
it's
can do nothing
honestly
about that.
it's all about the UN and the Arab League is what it really boils down to. It's a political thing. Even the Arabs are starting to give up. Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar have all come out and supported the move of the U.S. Embassy. It is only the Palestinians, Yemen, most of your terrorist countries that has really objected to it now, and that is just a recent development. Basically, the Palestinians have been nothing but a pawn to the Arab League since 1948 when Israel, well, it was 47 when they formed the country, but it became official in 48. So
My
And I'm not-
opinion is,
Both sides have reacted terribly to stuff, and it's like they want to act like that's not true or whatever, and it's just
well, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say my opinion on places like Yemen and all that is I don't give a fuck about the opinion of places where you're still raping children.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's all through Islam. It's
Yeah. So I don't care about any of their opinions. You're still raping kids. I don't give a fuck about what your country says.
I just look at it like this. The Palestinians claim it was their land. No, there is never and never will be a country of Palestine. There has never been an official government of Palestine. There's never been an official currency of Palestine. If you really want to go back, the Jews held the land 2,000 years before Christ. There was no such thing as Islam before 700 Common Era.
How long did Jewish tribes persist in the area after Christ?
After Christ, they have persisted from the inception of the tribes until current day. There has never been a time where there has not been a Jew living in the Holy Land. And part of that is because of Muhammad. When he invented Islam, when he was inspired by Gabriel, I think it was, to write the Quran. By the way, Muhammad was illiterate. But when he made these rules up, you had to be Arab in order to be a Muslim. So he allowed for Christians and Jews to practice their religion just as long as they paid the jizya. So they are under a protected status called the people of the book. So just as long as they pay the jizya, they should be able to live in peace. Although throughout the history of Islam, there's several times where they intentionally started wars, like on the Shabbat, when the Sabbath, when Jews are not supposed to do any work, they would intentionally start wars so they could persecute the Jews. There's 3 missing tribes of Jews, supposedly, and that dates back to the Mecca and Medina days of Muhammad, where he completely killed off one tribe and then raped the wife of the chieftain of that tribe directly after beheading him, and 2 others were banished from the land. So it's really all how you read the history, but Jews have always been in that area. I mean, there's still Jews living in Iran.
Yeah, there are.
And that's one of the weird idiosyncrasies with all the religions that come out of there, because it's also thought that Islam was formed after a Catholic heresy within the Middle East began, which I'm not entirely sure how that lines up, but it's an interesting thought.
That's something I've seen in Jack Chick, so I always take that with a grain of salt.
Well, no, I've seen legit. If it is a Jack Chick thing, that's terrible. But no, I've seen other people religious scholars say that that's a possibility, which is also really weird because of how much like there are specific errors in the Bible that are also within the Quran, which shows a great deal of plagiarism.
Oh, well, the Quran
well,
is
yeah,
completely
they,
plagiarized. I mean,
But that also shows that like plagiarism is rampant within religions in the Middle East. For example, the flood story is straight out of the book, the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Yep.
So it wasn't
Yep.
even their flood,
But
technically
also,
speaking.
the Muslims had the same thing that the Christians did, where eventually all of their, papers had to be gathered up and they had to make it into a book. And a bunch of it they were like, oh, well, we're not going to put this in, but we are going to put this in. They did the same thing the Christians did with that.
Yep.
yeah. Well,
That's when they were politicking for what the religion should be characterized as.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you're talking about with
I think it's the Council
Christianity.
of Trent.
Yeah, that happened through the Vatican. Well, not the Vatican, but through the papacy.
Well, it happened more than once. In
Oh yeah,
Christianity.
there's been a couple of conferences over it. But in Islamic history, what is very interesting is they admit that they are the youngest of all the Abrahamic religions. Although Muhammad claims Islam was forever, basically all the Arabs were pagans prior to Muhammad bringing Islam into the Middle East. So it contradicts itself all the time. And what I find really, really interesting about Islam is the fact that one of the major people who was a leader in the Islamic world after the death of Muhammad was his cherished favored wife, the 6-year-old girl he married and did not bed until she was 9, Aisha. But she became one of the largest Islamic scholars of her time because she, of course, laid with the Prophet.
Yeah.
And she is revered, where we all know women are far from revered in Islam.
Yeah. Well, except for his mother, because his mother is.
Yeah, his mother's held in more esteem than any of his wives.
Even Aisha, whatever her name, his youngest. Yeah.
Which
Still-
honestly, I think any religion whose main prophet is a confirmed pedophile really doesn't have much legitimacy.
Yeah, there you go. I'm the same thing with a country. Any country who one of your laws is, pedophilia is okay, go rape and marry children, you don't have much legitimacy in my eyes.
Well, especially in like Afghanistan, where like people from the U.S. military over there, they were told to ignore it when they see abusive stuff going on, and it's like, no.
Yeah, absolutely. Do not think we should be ignoring it at all.
I know.
Well, that was for cultural reasons, and yeah, it's nothing that as a former U.S. serviceman, it did not go ignored that often. There was a lot of times where we would get in trouble for overstepping our bounds.
Oh yeah, I absolutely believe that. I don't think hardly anybody would be able to tell themselves, all right, I'm supposed to ignore this because culture. No, nobody would be able to just sit back and see that.
Well, very few members of the U.S. military buy into the whole cultural relativism thing. You'll only find that really in academia.
There is a very good argument for a relativistic view of morality, and I would be more than happy to talk about that.
Okay, well, FGM, go.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that's not what I'm talking about.
Well, I mean,
I actually think that's a moral issue is a separate argument, and it's actually quite interesting.
Well, it's a cultural issue, is what is.
It's an issue of, had our society been in that particular place with those particular conditions, it is quite likely that we would have turned out similar or the same as them. So, if we account for their environmental conditions and all the wars and all their history, is it really any surprise that they turned out that way? Whereas with us, we became a very stable culture very quickly. Yeah, we had the benefit of current technology.
Not claiming that it is in any way surprising that they have turned out that way, but in a far more open society that we're in now, where they can see more clearly that this is fucked up, it should end. And in fact, in like the 1970s in Iran and these places, you were seeing a far more modernized country. So it's not like
Right,
this
and
has
then the
been
United
this way
States stepped in
forever.
and overthrew the Shah. I mean, I know we all know the history of that particular idea back in the 50s. The CIA went in, toppled the Shah, and instilled a dictator
Yeah, I'm not
that
saying
we
it's not our
have
fault
in
either.
protective custody. So we did that.
But I'm not saying we didn't. I'm just saying that it's not like it's been like that forever. They had a point where they were moving away. So it's not like it's just ingrained into their heads to be this way.
Right, but you have to also keep in mind, as our societies became more open and interconnected, we had our fair share of people who, at the time, were similar in terms of religious fundamentalism.
Oh yeah, yeah. We look.
Like we had a
My
different
argument-
outcome because our conditions were different. However, we have the benefit of having our government not overthrown by a hostile foreign power behind our backs.
I look at the cultural relativism argument as this: not all cultures are equal. To claim otherwise is ignorant.
I agree that not all cultures are equal, but how do you determine quality of culture?
The fact that you don't rape kids would be a
The
good
success of the society as a whole.
How do you define success of a society as a whole?
Economic stability, length of
No
peace
raping of
within its own
kids.
country.
Saudi Arabia is a good country then.
No.
Again, no raping of kids. That is a stipulation.
Hang on.
They're economically stable, but they are not sociologically stable.
What are you talking about? They don't have riots everywhere, and they don't have an insurgency problem like everyone else. Technically,
The
they
hell they
fit
don't.
that criteria.
They really do have an insurgency problem. It's not
We have an
actually.
insurgency problem too.
We don't have it to the levels they do. There's
still have
actual
it.
terrorist attacks that happen there almost on the daily. It's just
It was getting to the point very quickly, not too long ago, where that happened to be the reality as well here. Just we happen to be a much larger country, so the impact is spread out over a greater section of land.
yeah. And I mean, most of the real hot spots where you're going to see that, you're not going to see that in rural America because
There's
most
not
of the
that many people.
Well, it's not even about that. It's about where the quote unquote problem people tend to settle. And I'm not going to mince my words here. You don't see a Muslim population anywhere in rural America. You're going to see it only in population centers, and that is where all your problems happen. But it makes sense because the more people you put in one area, the more likely for violence to occur.
Right, but when we're talking about, okay, so let's talk about Dearborn, for example. I'm sure you know about Dearborn.
Dearborn is actually kind of the outlier when it comes to Muslim populations because that is almost an entirely Muslim city now.
Yeah, and
even their entire governmental framework there is nothing but muzzies.
So let me explain why I bring up Dearborn. You have an example of two cultures that are incompatible. However, the one culture allows for the dissemination and democratization of ideas. They, within the legal framework, elect officials that represent the individuals within that town, and they just move in legally and quietly take it over. Now, to the population that is essentially being invaded, that doesn't seem very fair. However, within their culture, it allows for this. So is there really any kind of requirement within an open society for cultures to merge?
Yes. When the old country culture is not acceptable within the mainstream of the new country, assimilation must happen, or the old country people who refuse to assimilate must go.
So then within a country like America, we're not going to use America as a particular example. We're going to hypothetical like America. With a government similar to ours, is there any way you could see the remediation of that problem that arises as a result of disparate groups of individuals trying to live together? within
Well,
within a population center? Is there any way that that can be remediated peacefully?
Well, we've seen it happen over time is how it happens. Like we've seen it with the Irish. When we originally came here, we were all crammed into New York and we were recreating basically little Irish villages there. They did the same thing with the Italians, with pretty much everybody who's come here. We started as these very small communities who very much kept to our own cultures, our own ways, but slowly over time, moving more into the country, moving further away, meeting more people from the American culture, because there's very much, whether people want to admit it or not, an American culture that it transcends race, religion, all of that. This country has created a culture all its own.
Right, and I agree
assimilate
that
into it.
shouldn't. I agree that that shouldn't be ignored, and is a very important aspect of those cultures integrating. Those cultures were compatible, though. They already had enough similar values that the cultures were compatible enough to essentially just sublimate and create something new.
Now, one of the interesting things about the whole Dearborn situation is the majority of the people over there have actually assimilated into the American culture. They just kept their religion. You do see some problems popping up in Dearborn, especially with some radicalized youths. There's actually a group of ISIS supporters there. Most of them has been arrested. There was a small sector of Al Qaeda. And a lot of this stuff has been kept quiet through the mainstream media because they don't want to show the potential of the anarchy that can come through that. And to be quite honest,
that's not what I'm asking, though.
Probably some quite unconstitutional things happen to those people.
What I'm asking, that I'm not saying that that's not important and isn't something that should be brought up. What I'm asking, though, is how does essentially the host culture, let's think of it this way, handle this new strain of culture that's been injected into the stream? Is there any peaceful resolution if there are no similarities or very few common values within that culture?
Well, how they do it in North Korea or in South Korea when North Korean defectors come in is they actually force them. I wouldn't agree with forcing someone to do this unless you were in a situation like North and South Korea where you had to take it very seriously like this. But they force them into basically a center for a year where they have to learn how to live within the society that they're moving into. I would say offer it maybe as more voluntary service. Like here, if you want, some help culturally assimilating, this would be a good idea to go check out. And I think that with controlled immigration, you don't flood in a culture that doesn't mix well with your own. You have to control the flow of how many people come. Then yes, you will see assimilation. You'll see a perfectly working society. Maybe not perfectly working, but
will the rate of assimilation exceed the rate of radicalization based on the new culture?
I think so.
Depends on the new culture.
Yeah, it would depend on the individual.
I mean, using America or an American-esque culture, there's less chance of radicalization because of the freedom of social, economic, and everything else throughout the American culture. Even though there's this perception that oppression. However, the ones that are hardcore fundamentals, no, they don't assimilate, and that is where one of the glories of capitalism usually steps in, and they start to starve. If you can't speak the language, you can't get the job. If you can't work within the normal confines of the job, you don't get paid. I think if we had less of a welfare state, you would see more assimilation through actual necessity. And that's one thing a lot of people don't look at.
Right, I understand that. However, there's a problem with that. Once essentially a colony has been established, that removes the requirement for them to learn the language of the host society. So when that happens, you wind up having essentially a closed community form, which is exactly what happens with populations in Islam, because that's part of their culture. And that's antithetical essentially to Western culture, is because they we allow the flow of ideas, they remain very concentrated, and they wind up becoming extremely sectarian as a result, and then that causes problems. If we can look at it, what's happening in Europe as a warning about what can happen if this is allowed to happen in the States, and I don't think that's going to happen here, thankfully. It's just too expensive to get here, quite frankly speaking. But when you have that, you wind up having essentially a pipeline for people to come in who no longer have that requirement and can essentially just pick up their job like they left it yesterday.
Right.
You wind up having this essentially parasite grow within the society, and that's really how you have to think of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a virus. All memes are.
I mean, to an extent, but generationally, if these kids end up going to, schools with regular, they're going to see the internet, they're going to have TV, they're going to see American culture. They will assimilate generationally.
So
maybe slowly, but it'll happen.
Omar Mateen was a second generation American. He's the guy that shot up Pulse.
Yeah, I'm not saying it would happen within a second. Actually, the second generation is usually when you see more radicalization. It would be more along lines of a third or fourth generation when you would actually see assimilation begin to take place that way.
So should the host culture be forced to essentially suffer the consequences of a very rough and painful assimilation without the benefit of that initial culture maturing to a compatible point?
That would be up to the host culture, in my opinion. I mean, it's up to you how strongly you defend your borders and allow people in or not.
But I think honestly it should be on the...
How does the culture deal with that once it's already become established?
With an iron fist.
Yeah.
So, is there motivation, though? Is there motivation for them to want to assimilate?
That's why I say get rid of the welfare state. Yes, there'll be plenty of motivation.
Okay. I mean,
I have no issue starving people out to make them comply. I'm the guy that'll argue forward. I'm not a nice guy. I don't pretend to be or play one on TV.
No, I'm actually as someone who grew up as part of the welfare state, I'm all for the idea of slowly transitioning off of it, because it's gotten to a point where you learn it generationally. Like you would learn you assimilate into this state where all you basically learn is how to game the system to continue your survival, rather than learning how to actually better yourself and get out of that system.
It's a modern day plantation is the way I look at it. You're going to sit there and you're going to vote for these people because they're going to keep on giving you money. You're going to accept these restrictions on your freedom because people are going to give you money for it. And so it starts an interdependency on the government, which you actually cede more freedoms to the government, giving them more power because they're controlling the purse. They're controlling your paycheck. They're controlling how much food can come into your household. I look at it like this. Freedom is a double-edged sword. It's not always pretty. You can succeed and you can live a prosperous life, or you can fail miserably. But one of the great things about America that has always existed is Americans generally are charitable.
Let me ask you a question. Is there a job for everybody?
Is there a job for everyone? Yes. Maybe not be what they want to do, but there is a job.
Okay. So with people with an IQ of less than 83, there is no job because they're not capable of performing complex tasks. That's about 10% of the population. What should we do with them? Should we allow them to starve?
Have them flip burgers.
They can't.
No,
At an IQ of less than 83, you are incapable of performing any complex task. I've worked with someone with an IQ of 87. It is very frustrating because they have no short-term memory.
I have seen people who suffer from Downs that actually can maintain jobs. They have issues budgeting and stuff like that. But
the average Down syndrome patient has an IQ of 87 through 95. They're well within the realm of basic capability, They're just not able to do any higher complex things.
This is
So
why
should
I
that 10% of the population be allowed to starve?
But they will hire those people with Down syndrome, for example. They often hire them to do stocking shelves or a Walmart greeter or.
But what he's saying is somebody who isn't even to that capability level. Someone like with extreme autism that could not possibly.
There's still
fair,
charities out there and stuff
to
like
be fair,
that.
if someone is in that state, they're probably either going to have their parents, their family caring for them, or they're going to be in a home.
So should the family have to bear that burden alone, or should there be a social program that helps with that?
That comes down to disability, right? Which is something I deal with on the regular.
Right, and I mean, we're not talking about we're not saying that your part of your body didn't.
No, but someone with that mental state would be
having an IQ of less than
disabled.
85.
And at that point, that person would be considered disabled, and the question would be: should the family get some sort of stipend or whatever to help out with that person who is clearly disabled, right?
And to that point, I don't really have that much of a problem with some type of welfare program. Where I really have the problem is where you have able-bodied people who are capable to work but unwilling to work is where the true problem is.
Completely.
That's the biggest problem in America today, is the fact that you have too many able bodies who are unwilling to work and yet are still able to live.
So I'm going to cut in for just a second. Ragdoll Cassie in the chat actually brings up a very interesting point. Her cousin has an IQ of less than her 3-year-old daughter and is 46 years old. And she is not sure if she thinks that she's able to flip burgers when she can't even communicate. We're talking about profound mental retardation.
Well, and
yeah, this is why I suggested we lower the dependence on the welfare state. Like, I want to weed out some of the corruption within it, some of the generational hand-me-down that these children are receiving. That
I absolutely believe that that's something that should be pursued. The way I would like to change welfare is you allow it, screen for drugs, and you put them into a vocational work study program or college.
Yeah, but that whole assumption that poor people must do drugs, that's total.
Well, no,
it's actually quite a legitimate thing, though.
Yeah, but
because
I have friends who do both. I have friends who are both of those apply.
But I'm just saying it would cost so much money to do this drug screening, and they are actually extremely easy to bypass.
They are.
Yeah.
Right. Now, let's assume for a moment that we're able to get these people into a regular job where they can begin to contribute toward the engines of the economy. You know, if they become productive members of society, they then get off of welfare. We have a progress requirement similar to a Job Corps program, for example, where they become skilled labor, because the problem is they're unskilled labor. They're not specialized in anything, so they can't do anything. So if we specialize parts of the population, we then wind up getting more people out of poverty by their own labor. That way they can then go and feed back into the system and begin to make that opportunity available for other people.
It would also actually help a lot within this country if we offered up more education and help in how to sustainably grow your own food. It's actually extremely possible in even a small apartment. Like you could grow a large portion of your own food, and you could keep chickens and rabbit. It used to be like encouraged for everybody to keep at least 6 chickens to provide their own eggs, and we don't do that kind of stuff anymore. Like, people would be able to feed themselves if they actually fed themselves.
Well, a kind of a problem with that is there's a lot of areas where it would a family would not be able to maintain 6 chickens, especially in your heavy urbanized areas. You just don't have the land for that to happen. You do have to have X amount of land just so you can rotate where your chickens are kept at. And
actually, they used to encourage like rooftop garden kind of areas for that. They've made plans up to where whole cities could have like rooftop gardens on every one where you could keep animals and grow food. and nobody actually does it or takes it seriously.
I
Well,
like
with-
the idea of modular farming towers.
I don't know enough about that.
There's
to be
this
honest.
concept that's been out called called modular farming towers. It's vertical farming where you can then build it into specific configurations for the population's dietary requirement. You can remove parts and add new, so you can repair it very easily, and it's very cheap to make. So we can wind up, and it uses 98% less water and fertilizer and food, which is somehow, it's weird. But it winds up creating less water pollution, and it winds up putting more water back into the system so that water prices go down, and it winds up cleaning the water as well because there's not as much farming waste going into our rivers and streams.
Now, this is just one thing I'd like to bring up. With the industrialized society that we live in, we have become overly specialized, meaning that people used to be able to fix general machinery and stuff like that. Now we have people who only fix machinery. We have people who only program computers. The majority of people in a modern society probably can't even maintain a rose bush these days, and it's because we have over specialized through a capitalist system. I don't see
that. Would you say that due to increased specialization that the workers become alienated from their labor?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
I didn't know you were a communist.
Not at all.
No,
I don't buy into the whole workers need to take over the means of production and all this other rhetorical bullshit. I just look at it as certain knowledge ends up disappearing over time. It used to be, my daddy was a farmer, his daddy was a farmer, and I'm a farmer. And part of being a farmer is I was also a mechanic, I was an electrician, yada, yada, yada. But we have, with industry coming around and basically turning everything into huge production mills where you have more line assembly type jobs, you see a lot of skills go by the wayside. So you have people like myself, who was an electronics technician on aircraft, hence the name AircraftSparky. I'm extremely specialized in electronics and electrical deals. I can still do mechanical work. I know how to grow crops and stuff like that just because of how I was raised. I know how to hunt. But there was a lot of people who I worked with that grew up in strictly urban environments that themselves don't know. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's
right. So should it be the responsibility of everybody to learn to fend for themselves, or should it be the responsibility of the society to promote specialization so that everybody's needs are met?
Well, I'm a capitalist. I like the idea of specialization. It actually works quite well. But the drawback to that is the fact that you are dependent on other specialties in order to progress.
Well, I mean, we also don't teach basic life skills like that in public education. If we're going to have public education, what's the point if in an urban society where they aren't learning this shit like I did growing up as a kid? Why aren't they learning it in school then?
Is it the school's responsibility to make sure that everybody has specific skills, or is there any responsibility for the family to pass these lessons on in order to ensure a responsible society?
I would argue
for the family.
Yeah, in my personal opinion, I'm all for homeschooling. I don't really like public school. My husband had to talk me into letting him send our kids there. I think that the responsibility for educating your children falls on you. The school doesn't educate my children. He talked me into sending them there for social reasons. I still educate my children. They know way more than their class does. Like, I've been told by teachers, my son knows more than the third graders, and he's in kindergarten.
Well, and now public schools don't really educate now because of standardized testing. All they do is teach the bare minimum in order for those tests to be passed, because that is the evaluation system used to judge the effectiveness of public education today.
Exactly.
So really, most public education programs are not truly educators They are just there to make sure that the standardized tests are passed, which that's one reason why I'm against federal control over education, because you see more standardization. When you had the individual states determining curriculum, we actually had an overall better education.
Did we?
Yes.
Are you sure about that? Louisiana was last for a very long time before federal minimums were instituted.
And
we're talking like creationism taught us science.
Still, the technological bounds that you saw during those times are heads, they're head over heels versus what you would see today. It's not because, oh, well, there was just this big technology gap and boom, there it was. No, you actually had critical thinking taught, where today, for Christ's sakes, we have people arguing over if a dude who thinks he's a girl is actually a woman. I mean, for Christ's sakes, there is no critical thought. There's no, this is a bad idea because it does not make sense.
I don't see how the two ideas are connected, but okay.
Yeah, I don't either.
You've got to be able to be rational.
Hang on. If we look at education, public school is better than homeschooling, not only for socialization reasons, but it makes sure that everybody at least has a base understanding of science, of mathematics, of their own language in terms of comprehension and ability and development. I agree that there are some things that should be.
Our current school system, though, is so taken over by
Paul, and I think politics should be completely removed.
Right? And it's like some of the stuff that they're being taught in schools right now isn't helping the situation. I mean, but I agree with the combination of both. You know what I mean? Like, if you still should do some education at home with your kids, you shouldn't let the school do everything.
This is going to be a very unpopular opinion. I think homeschooling should be banned.
Oh, absolutely not. You have no
I'm not
right
talking
to
about
tell me
like
what I
I'm
do
not
with my
talking about
kid.
like actual like homeschooling where you do the whole program at home. That's not what I'm in support of. I'm in support of I'm talking about education at home just in general, like talking to your kids, answering their questions, encouraging them to ask questions about different stuff, and because there's more stuff to life that you don't learn in school. Like, you don't learn how to do your taxes. You don't learn how to do a budget. You don't learn.
I actually learned that in school when I went, but my son has not, and so I've had to step up and teach him.
And that's where society has a deficit.
Yes, because we've made a bunch of helicopter parents, essentially. It's all about pleasure in the now, and I kind of blame Dr. Ruth for that in a little bit.
That's not a
if it feels good, do it.
Helicopter parent is the opposite.
Helicopter parents just drop their parents off everywhere and then fly off.
No, helicopter parents is where they're hovering over them constantly and will not leave them alone.
Then I misunderstood, and that's bad on me.
Yeah, helicopter parenting is terrible.
Yeah, absolutely. But I still think, no, you have no right to say homeschooling shouldn't be an option because nobody has any right to tell me what the fuck I do with my kid. If I think that I can educate them better than school, and obviously I've proven I can up to this point.
It's called free range parenting. I'm not even kidding.
Oh yeah.
I see no issue with free range.
We're gonna have disagreement.
Why is it called that?
And I'm not telling you. Hang on. We're gonna have a disagreement there, and I'm not telling you what you should or should not do. However, what I'm saying is that my taxes go for that spot in our local schools for your child, and it also helps with his social and immunization.
My taxes,
his socialization and his immune growth are bolstered by him being among people.
Yeah, my taxes go to the school to pay for my child, and it's up to me to decide if I want to send my kid to that spot or not, or whether I want to spend my own money to take care of my child at home. And
that's where we're going to disagree, because I think that your child is more important than you, and it's not about what your child means to you. It's about what the potential that child has for future development.
But in my opinion,
it's better for society to allow for us to all be at least on the same base level. If they're above, that's awesome. I'm really happy. You're one of the exceptional ones. But my friend Eric, he was homeschooled and he did not learn what he needed to learn. There's not enough responsibility, and the state allows that to happen. So having it as a base minimum is better because we get faster development.
I was bullied so much in school though that it was really hard to actually like focus on learning anything.
Yeah, school didn't teach me jack shit because I was always too smart for the classes. They would just let me sit there and read a book because I could pass any test you put in front of me.
So what's the highest level of math What's the highest level of math you completed?
I don't know. I went to college. I passed my exit level tax test for math when I was still a junior.
Calculus, trigonometry, statistics.
What is? Yeah, but what does math specifically mean that you're super duper?
Hang on, there's a point to this. What's the highest level of math you completed?
Yeah, I don't know. I did a year of college, but I didn't actually take any math class in that year because I focused
on grade 12.
Childhood development.
What about high school?
And I don't remember what the last thing they taught. Math models was my last.
No. But did you graduate grade 12? Right?
Yes, I graduated high school.
Have you learned
in my
calculus?
School? They make you take an extra math course to graduate.
See, have they made you learn calculus or trigonometry?
I don't even remember. I'm 28 now. It's fucking years ago, man. Who pays attention to what they learned in high school afterwards? Like I said, I didn't pay attention to any of my class. I tested out of my final math class because the teacher annoyed me, and you had to pass the test with a 90% if you were going to test out of the class if you'd never took it before. And so she spent the whole year, you didn't find out until the end of the year if you passed the tests. She spent the whole year telling me I should be doing my work anyway because I might fail the whole course and have to redo my senior year if I didn't pass that test. And I told her, I passed. I don't care. And I did.
Right, but I'm not talking. Right. I'm merely asking this in furtherance of an argument.
Yeah,
What's the highest level of science you completed, if you remember? Was it physics?
I believe the highest level of science was chemistry. I think that was the last one.
Okay. Those kinds of skills, chemistry, physics, trigonometry, calculus, all of that is required for us to teach it to people. People don't understand chemistry intuitively. It's too abstract. It's too small for us to see. So we can't accurately model it in our heads, so we don't intuitively learn it.
Oh, yeah, that's where you're going with this. No, I have a system already set up, and many parents do the responsible thing like this. I have a cousin who is an electrical engineer, and she's so fucking smart, and she homeschools her kid as well. And when we get to those subjects that I cannot teach, that's her response. That's where my kid will go to her, and she'll send her kid to me for things like English, writing, things I'm better at, music, things my husband could help with, and we will do an exchange.
Right, I understand that, but I understand that, but not everybody has that resource. The argument is in order to ensure that this practical scientific knowledge can continue and allow for the greatest amount of variation between specialization as possible.
Those resources are actually made quite easily available. There are many homeschooling groups where parents interconnect and they decide what, each parent could better teach their kid. They do their own socialization programs. They have football leagues and everything. Like, homeschooling has gone far beyond just one parent teaching their child in their home.
Yeah.
Okay, and I understand that. Believe me, I do. And I'm trying to nail the point home that not everybody is going to have access to that.
But I'm trying to nail the point home that the responsibility.
I understand the responsibility of the governing
society. Society has no rights over my child, has no responsibility over my child. It is my child. My family, maybe biologically related, the group that is helping raise the child, they might have some responsibility, some right to say, hey, you're not doing what you should be. We're going to step in here and do something better for your child. But I don't think society has that right in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And now what I have to ask, Place, is do you have children?
Personally, no.
Okay. Now, I will tell you this as a parent.
It's also dishonest.
No, it really isn't.
Tactic.
It really isn't.
It doesn't matter if I have children.
Personal experience in this case kind of does have a bit of relevance.
I will explain. Your mind literally does change after you have a child. You never think of things the same again.
I'm not saying that your thoughts are invalid. I've seen a lot of times where homeschooling has failed. Do not get me wrong. And there are ways to cheese a system and completely screw over your kids. However, if you honestly buy into freedom and everything else, I don't see how you can't argue for the parents, because ultimately it is your responsibility as a parent to take care of those children. And I think it is wrong to for a government to actually try to force a means of parenting on a child.
Okay, means of parenting is an entirely different subject. We're not talking about
no, it really isn't, because
we're talking about the standard of epistemological knowledge.
Okay, but there are state requirements
in order for us to advance and essentially reassert our cultural dominance over the world. We are the world's hegemon.
It's a slippery slope between the government, the society needs to be the one deciding the education of children I hate to go here because liberals always go here, but Hitler Youth, it was a thing for a reason. He literally was stealing a generation of children by means of claiming that society raising them was better than the family.
You have to consider, though, that you're thinking about a culture that is hypersensitive to that type of behavior.
But I'm saying it is a slippery slope if you can move that way logically from, parents, not everybody is going to be able to properly educate their kid. Therefore, we must decide that nobody gets to homeschool educate their kid. It must be done in this public way because we know that's best. That's half a step away from saying, well, you can't raise your child either.
I think you're conflating the issue between an emotional one and a rather logical one.
No, I think it is absolutely logical. People could, from a logical point of view, turn around and say, we no longer entrust you with the education of your children. It is not far to make a logical leap to we no longer trust individual parents with the raising of their children.
And you're already seeing that kind
There's a difference between education and raising, though. Child rearing is an entirely different process that involves emotional development.
It's not really that different.
Education is not that. Education is simply teaching them skills in order to survive in a highly complicated, increasingly technologically interconnected and advanced world.
But it's not really that different when they go to school for 8 hours a day as it is.
I don't like the 8 hours a day schedule. I don't. I think it should be shortened to 6. They should be given 2 recess periods and a half-hour lunch in between. I think that would be a perfectly accessible school system.
And
that
I
would be
think
great.
Switching to A and B days like they have in some schools where you study some subjects on one day and some on another would be far better for children as well, because then they're getting more time on individual subjects and teachers are getting more time with individual children.
You are actually seeing that a lot in school these days.
But that's not the point.
But yet my point is still that, if they're spending the majority of their time there, whether it's 6 to 8 hours, that's still the majority of their day every day. How is that far away from saying that these type of institutions, how to say like 50 years from now, a generation isn't going to say that this is half a step away. These institutions could be raising these children far better, that society raises children better than parents because the possibility of abuse from parents. If you're going that same direction with education, how is that not half a step away from doing it with raising?
Because we're not talking about instilling a moral system. You're assuming that we want to instill a moral system within those individuals in order to create essentially a generation of slave-minded drones. That's not what we're talking about. And that's why I try to delineate between what I was saying and the emotional reaction. I'm not talking about stealing children away to indoctrinate them. I agree with you that that's a horrendous practice.
No, but parents should have the right to parent the way they fit,
as long as a society as us is sensitive to. I think that we would be okay. What I'm talking about is ensuring as much scientific and technological advancement as possible for our society by making sure as many people as possible are able to do things like calculus, like physics, or like trig.
Isn't the best way to do that voluntary rather than removing someone's rights?
Well, are we talking about the rights of the parent or the rights of the child?
The rights of the parent, because
So what about the rights of
parent-
the child? What if the child wants to go to public school, but the parent won't let them?
Are you going to argue that a child
don't
under
always
the
know
age of
what's best for them.
18 has the mind for consent, that they can make their own decisions at that age?
Even if the child is capable of thinking of about itself conceptually in the future. It knows, hey, if I go learn that stuff, I can go do some really cool
It
things.
depends how old the kid is. How old
Yeah,
of a
It doesn't
kid are
matter.
you?
If the child says, I want to go to school,
How old
should
of
they
a
have the
child?
option to go to school?
How
if a
old?
child says, I don't want to go to school, are you going to respect that decision?
Okay.
Yes.
I know this is a silly straw man, but let me put it out there for a second. If your kid wakes up and says, I want to wear pajamas to school, or I want to go to school naked, let's go with that one, because you're not allowed to do that. Let's say the kid says, oh, I want to go to school naked. Are you going to say yes?
I'm not even going to approach that one, Jer.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing. You're saying the child
That's
has
why I'm
the
asking
right
the
to
age of the kid,
decide.
right? That's why I'm asking the kid's age.
What I'm merely suggesting is that there's going to be, under the system that currently exists, there is a population of children that are being underserved by the society.
Yes.
If the child wants to go to school, if they recognize that they are
How
deficit
old
in
is the
some
child?
regards,
Is it a 12-year-old?
should they have the option to go to school, regardless of the wishes of the parent?
How old, though? Is it a 12-year-old or is it a 5-year-old?
Doesn't matter.
It does matter.
A 12-year-old
It really
is capable of
does.
detecting deficits
You
within its own
can't
ability, by the
sit
way.
there and say that a kid is going to make the best decisions for themselves.
At 5.
Kids are stupid.
That's literally
So
why.
even if the decision to go to school would benefit the kid in the future, the parents should be allowed to prevent that from occurring.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not even putting forth what is the mindset behind the parent. Why is the parent saying no? Because the parent might have a good reason. Maybe the parent doesn't trust the public education system. Maybe they trust that they could do it better. Maybe they can and the kid doesn't know. Maybe that parent is a scientist.
Okay,
so hang on. I need to clarify
standards,
something. This is not a personal attack on anybody who is
No, we don't.
involved within this. I'm getting that feeling from you that you think that this is something that I'm trying to aim at you.
Oh, no, sorry. I get a little, I guess passionate would be the word, and people think that I'm actually genuinely offended, but I'm not. This is just a discussion in my mind.
There are, what about the state standards, though? Aren't there state standards for homeschools?
Yes, there are, and it has a very poor enforcement mechanism.
Yes,
the enforcement mechanism is the standardized test, the same as at regular schools. Your standardized tests ensure whether the child is, getting properly educated or not.
That's not what I mean by enforcement mechanism.
Usually it depends on the parent to actually verify the teaching, and so parents can actually cheese the results.
Precisely. There's no third-party verification.
No. They do, in fact, make homeschooled kids go to public schools and take the text tests, the standardized tests.
But that doesn't enforce the rest of the teaching, is what they're trying to say.
Well, but I'm saying it's the same standard that you're giving to the public school. If that test is what determines if they're being properly educated, then that test is what you have to accept as the determination if the parent is properly educating them.
It's okay. I have some friends, and I know this is anecdotal. They were homeschooled by their mother, and
was it just me, or did everybody lose him?
I think he's down.
But from my own anecdotal point of view, my husband was homeschooled. That's why he argues so much against me homeschooling my children, not because his mother did a bad job with educating him. She did a very good job. He was not prepared socially. And that's what my husband worries about with the kids. And that's why I ended up agreeing with him, especially with our oldest child who has anxiety like me, that it would be a good idea as long as it was only the social part that we were sending him to school for. I'm still educating them at home. He's perfectly fine with that. He encourages that, in fact. And it's up to me if I feel that the school is actually harming him with his anxiety, because it was really bad for me with my anxiety going to school because nobody realized I had anxiety. They just called me weird my whole life. And
yeah,
school went
I was like that too.
So, yeah, so I mean, it falls on me, and he's fine with that if I decide that this is worse for him rather than better, I pull him at any point. And that's how me and my husband came to a compromise over what is best for our children. I think every parent has to do that. They have to find what is best for their child. And it's only the parent who can do that. Society is not going to figure out what is best for each individual child.
I understand where you're coming from, and that's why I brought up the point of if a child is dissatisfied with homeschooling, should they have the right, even against the wishes, to go to public school?
We have a process for that, actually. If the child feels that their parent lack of education leads to a point of abuse, the child has every right to call, CPS, 911. These things are available to that child. These things are well documented, easy for the child to find. Also, there's the process. You can get yourself legally emancipated if you're.
And I understand that, but what I'm getting at is it would completely remediate the problem if public education were standardized and mandatory, legally speaking.
But you can't remove every problem from society. Like, that's just not possible. You're not going to be able to protect every child. You're not going to be able to educate every child. It's always best to lean towards the side of freedom and personal responsibility rather than societal.
And I agree with that. However, I agree with that asterisk. However, if the child does not understand that they're being abused, even if it would legally meet the definition of abuse, let's say the child has been indoctrinated into a deeply religious family, and the child doesn't understand that the world is not actually 6,000 years old, and that, 6,000 years old, and that the earth was not created in 7 days. That child doesn't have any kind of understanding of a world other than that family. So that child's needs are not being met, and they are being severely abused, but they can't call for help.
And we have other options for that too. There are mandatory reporters. Like, that child's going to see a doctor at some point.
Oh, I know. My younger sister is a mandated reporter. I understand that. Trust me. But the problem is that there are not enough mandatory. Like, if we're going to go the route of mandated reporters, there just aren't enough. There are more children being abused than are being taken out of those situations and helped. And then there are more still that are being abused within the system.
Yeah, the child
that's created by that problem of people being abused at home and not being able to escape it.
But you see,
having that mandatory minimum of everybody goes to school, everybody gets this education. That way, we as a society can move forward.
Yeah.
That would completely remediate that and remove millions of children from an abusive situation.
It wouldn't, though. I mean, I went to public school my whole life in an abusive situation the entire time. Nobody saved me. I mean, you're not going to be able to save. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You're not going to be able to save every child. It comes to a point where sometimes kids flourish, and it's shitty when they don't, but sometimes they do. Sometimes there's a kid like me who manages to get out of it, to do something with their life. My mother, I don't know if she did this subconsciously or purposefully, but she literally sabotaged every chance I had to have a better life. I could have gone to an Ivy League school. I was invited to the Future Leadership of America conference twice. Not many kids are invited twice, and I didn't get to go either time because my mother decided I couldn't. I didn't get to go to another educational opportunity that was opened up to me where I could go to a program in a different state and basically go to college while I was still in high school. And she said, no, we couldn't afford it. Though she could have found me the money. My grandmother would have paid for it. I found out as an adult, but she didn't do it. And she sabotaged every chance I had to have a better life. I got one for myself anyway.
Yeah. And
I really don't want to sound like an a-hole.
I know, but like I said, with some of these situations, like a little kid can't make the decision. You know what we're saying though? Like a 5-year-old can't necessarily make the best decision as far as if they should go to school, but a 12-year-old more likely might be able to. You know what I mean? Like bullying, anxiety, stuff like that. Those are concerns as well, right?
So part of the reason why we introduce our children into society at such a young age is because of the process of socialization.
Yeah, but the bullying isn't always
socialized by the age of 4.
Okay,
they are not going to be desirable to society.
But the bullying situation,
interact with people.
It's not always such a simple bullying situation that it's as simple as, oh, the kid will get through it, it'll make him stronger. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it's.
Trust me, I know. I was horrifically bullied for 10 years. You don't need to make that point.
I'm not
Believe
saying
me,
you are
I
wrong, but
understand
I'm
it more
saying,
than
like,
you might think.
the amount
The
I was
point
bullied
is-
is probably. I don't know. I'm just saying it was different
The point
reasons,
is,
right?
oh yeah, because I was weird. I came from a different part of the country, and I had a different method of speech.
Oh no, but I was a nerdy weirdo, but I was also a cripple, so that made it even worse.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
That's not what I like.
I know, but I'm just saying there's more than one factor here that you have to consider about whether or not a certain child is better at home or in public school, right?
Right, and that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to, at least. If you take a holistic approach at the development of a human being, that human being flourishes when in the presence of other human beings approximately its own age working towards a goal.
Oh, I agree, but some
Goal is
groups,
graduation.
but a lot of people who
So
homeschool,
that's our initiation into the world now.
but a lot of people in homeschools are doing so in large groups. Like there's a group of kids that have a network and they have socialization. Some of them,
And a lot of us, we just have a lot of cousins. You know, all my siblings had kids around the same time. My cousins had kids all around the same time. My kids have a large social group without ever having to go outside the family if I wanted to.
What about unschooling?
Unschooling, I don't know that one.
It's a form of homeschooling where there's no scheduled curriculum, testing, or grades.
That's abuse.
Oh, that's basically kind of how I school my kids, and they're doing much better than kids in public school. Like, we learn things more naturally. We did a growing project right now is what we're doing, where my children are growing tomatoes, carrots, all kinds of vine vegetables. Anytime any kind of a conversation comes up, they ask any questions, we explain it to them exactly. Like, we'll go online and, hey, let's look all this up. We talk about everything, basically. My kid could know anything they want to know.
Yeah.
Right, and
but they're getting both, right? Like they're getting. That's what I mean. That's what I meant by home education, by the way. Is that type of stuff going on? Those regular conversations, plus the public school thing. It can be beneficial.
Well, but I was before they ever went to public school, my kids were prepared for public. Like, they were.
Yeah.
My autistic son, my youngest son, he is in preschool, a special education preschool to help him, be ready to actually enter into regular kindergarten. And the teachers can't even keep up with how smart he is when he'll actually talk to them, which is
my daughter was about 2 years behind because of the autism, so it's like.
Yeah, it's trying to get him to talk and communicate. Like, I know how smart he is, and they can see it when he actually shows them. But it's trying to get him to do it in a manner regularly where everybody can see how freaking smart he is.
And that's my other.
We're talking about separate issues, though. We're talking about separate issues. Your concern is with the curriculum, and I agree that the curriculum is a problem, and I would like to see that changed as well. And we can talk about that. What we're talking about, however, is just essentially achieving a basic understanding of science and math.
Actually, no. What I was
a certain base level of literacy and numeracy that's required to at least survive in society.
My issues, though, are that like they tend to focus on one style of learning at most schools. It's starting to change more now, but when you have a focus on one type of learning, like some are visual, some are hands-on, some are right. There's different learning styles. And a lot of schools don't take that into account because the teachers don't have the time to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm actually talking about a far more basic issue than just, what are we teaching in school? I'm talking about the basic, is it the right of the parent or the right of society? Like,
in my opinion, the right of society trumps the right of the parents. And I would say that within my own case as well, in terms of when I was a child.
Oh, no, absolutely. In my opinion, the rights of the parent always trump the rights of society.
Oh no, I understand the sovereignty of the individual, and I absolutely believe in that. But you have to keep in mind that that child is also an individual.
Yes, but the right
that child needs specific things in order for that individual to grow in such a way to survive in society. Because parents often fail to do that. I'm not saying that you're going to. I'm saying that it is often. It is often that happens, and that it's too often that it winds up harming society because you wind up getting an increasingly problematic portion of society that is not able to contribute to society. beyond. We're not even talking about the IQ problem. We're talking just in terms of generally, in terms of like general math and English ability. We wind up seeing people who've never read a book in high school.
My point is that the overall of society, like, oh yes, it would be best for society if as many children as possible were as well educated as possible. So we put things in place for that are voluntary, but society has absolutely no right to force it. Like it has to be voluntary, because then you are removing the right of the parent otherwise, and the responsibility of the child ultimately falls onto the parent always. Therefore, the rights of the child always fall.
No, I understand that. We just have a different interpretation of the role of society and the rights of society, and that's we're not gonna. We've reached an impasse. I don't think we can progress on this conversation.
Could we pause for a moment though and ask if EggLord or DireWolf have anything to add?
Yes, I definitely want to chat with Dire.
Hey, how you doing, Amanda?
Hey.
So my thoughts are, if you're given the responsibility of teaching children and picking what they are taught to the community, even a larger community, right? Then you're gonna have situations where, say, a parent would very much disagree with, say, I don't know, Sharia law being taught to their children, but because it's the right of that society, they can teach them whatever the heck the majority determines, or even a minority elite determines is what should be taught to those children. I think that it's a parent's choice to determine whether or not the schools they're going to put their kids into are the right schools.
I agree with school choice. I do not agree with the choice of curriculum. Any parent should be able to send their child to any school that is performing better than their local school. I agree with that. I think that's a really good idea. However, I think that all curriculums should be held up to the same standard nationally.
I don't agree that if the government determines something that they want to teach that I determine is harmful must be taught, that I must subject my kids to that.
So are we talking based on a religious exemption, or are we talking based on a like
either? Does it really matter?
Anything.
It kind of does.
Based on just the fact that I'm the parent and I said no.
I'm sorry, that's not good enough to explain why your child is not deserving to learn the information that it needs to know.
You may not think that it's morally right.
Getting sick, injured, or killed.
Okay, but who says that the schools are currently teaching the information they need to know? That's my argument.
Yes, exactly. Like I would know better if my kid is learning what they need to know or not than the school would.
Who knows better, the doctor or the mother?
In a lot of cases, the
mother.
I'm usually telling the doctor what is wrong with my child, and then they check them out and agree with me.
The people who made Common Core are obviously not that smart.
Okay, I have one other question.
That's a curriculum issue. We've
already
discussed. So that's a curriculum issue. We've already discussed that. So should mothers who disagree with a doctor based on vaccinations be allowed to refrain from having their children vaccinated?
Absolutely.
You're making the equivalency
I completely disagree, because you wind up compromising the herd immunity and exposing more people than should be to very contagious diseases. And it's because
you can have requirements for vaccinations for certain things like public schools, but you cannot tell a parent that they must vaccinate their children.
Yeah, you can't tell me I have to stick a sharp needle into my child and inject something.
You have to get a religious exemption, or there's, well, at least here anyway, there's also another type of exemption that you can get as well based on like moral grounds or something like that. I don't know what it is exactly, but and in our case, in the family line, there have been major terrible reactions to vaccines, so there are cases where kids are allergic and stuff. But
yeah.
So in cases where children are allergic to the vaccination, that's an exceedingly rare occurrence, and they should not be forced. That's why everyone else should, because you require that herd immunity to protect that person, or the person with cancer who has a compromised immune system, or the person with AIDS who has a compromised immune system. Those kinds of things will kill people with those kinds of pre-existing or comorbid conditions.
Yeah.
So you can't just say, well, it's my choice. It's not your choice.
It absolutely
is.
is.
Your
Look, we
choice
have
affects the life of a child who can then be exposed to a disease that we had previously eradicated.
I have
Again,
no
mumps
issue.
and measles are coming back for a reason.
You've made a false equivalency. We've all skipped over. I'd like to correct that. It is a false equivalency to say that the doctors and vaccines determining that kids should take vaccines is the same as school boards or elected officials working for the state determining curriculum. They're not experts.
They are related.
No, it's very different. It's a false equivalency.
No, let me explain why they're related then.
Okay.
So, your child goes to public school unvaccinated, and a kid who has a very easily treatable disease that has a vaccination available winds up exposing your child to it, and then by the extension, your entire family.
Moving from talking about kids having the right to teach what your kids are taught to
that child gets exposed to all kinds of diseases.
You have to stop talking over people, though, PlaceHolder. If people have to be able to respond to you.
Sorry.
So you're moving from the parent choosing what their kids are taught to parents choosing whether or not their kids are vaccinated. You're making a false equivalency that who's more right, the doctor or the mother.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the case of the curriculum, not vaccinations, there's the people making the decision what is in the curriculum are not they're not the same level as a doctor choosing what is best to vaccinate your child with.
I think we were trying to point out just parental choice with that part of it, but let's try and go back to the academic side of things. I wanted to ask PlaceHolder, what do you think the lowest age that a child can know what's good for them?
So that really that depends on the development of the child. If we determine that a child is developed sufficiently that they're capable of determining long-term goals, which kids can do. Kids can set up long-term goals. Let's say they find something that they like and they know how much they need to achieve that goal in terms of whether it's money or patience or any other resource, because patience is a resource.
Can that child
hang on.
Can that child see like 20 years down the road whether or not they should go to school, and what job they're going to get in the future, and do they have that development in their brain yet? I don't think they do, and I'm just saying. We
can use aptitude tests to determine that. I think that would be a way to do it. Replace all standardized testing with an aptitude test, and then steer them in the direction of classes that correspond to those aptitudes.
But see, that exact same argument would be used by pedophiles for age of consent for children.
Come on! Don't use straw. Don't use
I'm not trying to straw man. I'm just being honest.
Stop. That is a straw man if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, no. Instead,
we're not talking about pedophilia.
No, you're not. But if you're sitting there going, "Oh well, if this kid has an aptitude for this, that, and the other," you are just begging for pedophilia.
I really don't want to go down that road.
No.
Explain that.
That does not make sense.
Explain that.
What he's actually saying is that he would encourage the idea of determining a child's future for them, society determining a child's future for them in school. Give them a test, see what they're good at, and then teach them that.
Isn't that what they do now?
No.
That's what communists did.
That is insane.
So if a child shows mechanical aptitude and that thing holds their attention, should that child be forced to sit through classes that don't relate to that? They should still have to learn the math and the science.
Because you need to be well-rounded.
English isn't necessarily as important, and history is not necessarily as important.
It is.
You should be able to substitute some of those classes out in order to allow for essentially vocational job training, if that's the way they go.
That's insane. What if that's not the job they want 10 years from now? Sorry.
Right. I like how I was in the arts in college. I did a lot of things, but I mostly had a lot of education in the arts. But I ended up becoming a technician by random chance, and I'm doing very well at it. And I'm glad I had the freedom to choose to do that, even though I had an aptitude towards something else.
You don't take away the choice after they become an adult. You just send them out with a set of skills. Hang on,
You send them out not educated in anything except the thing you've decided they'll be good in because, society gets to educate your kid instead of the parent.
That's not at all what I said.
Pretty much. We'll aptitude
you're
test them.
conflating education with educating morality. The state doesn't care about morality. The state cares about what that person is able to do and how much they will need to rely on the government.
No, you're saying you take a kid, you force the parent must send them to this government mandated school. They must. And then when you get to the school, you just test the kid, aptitude test them, find out what they're good at, replace certain other classes as long as it's not science and math with that thing they're good at, and that's what they're getting educated in. You can know science, math, and this thing we decided you're good at. That's insane.
They ultimately have the choice what they do. It just gives them a set of skills that they can use to survive. If I'd been allowed to finish what I was saying before being interrupted, I get that I interrupted earlier, and I haven't since.
Okay. Oh, yeah, for sure. We'll let you talk. Go ahead.
The main bone of contention, as I'm understanding it, is that, let's say high school students, for example, aren't able to see far enough ahead in the future. Yet, they are expected to pick a college at approximately the age of 16. That's when they start looking at their colleges and seeing what colleges they can make it into, and that's how they guide their classes. If we allow for that student to substitute out irrelevant classes to what they want to do or what they are able to do, because there is a lot of overlap between the two, it gives them the ability to go out and live. It gives them the ability to be a well-rounded person within a field that they chose without having to go to college necessarily right away. Or if they choose not to go to college, they don't wind up being essentially poorer perpetually.
At the high school level, you already get to choose to do things like that. They're called electives.
Not where I went to school.
As long as it's the parent and the kids choosing, and not that they're being pushed in a certain direction because of aptitude tests.
Yeah, exactly. And the way you're talking about it, it sounds like a much younger age. It sounds like you have to force the kid the way you're saying it, it sounds like kids must be forced to go to school from kindergarten, aptitude tested, and sent in that direction from a young age.
No. If you're talking about they can take an aptitude test and then they are just armed with the information of, hey, I just found out I'm good at this. Now, when I make decisions, I might base my decision off of this information. That's fine, as long as no decision is being taken away from the parent and kid.
We're not taking choice away from the children. The children are ultimately capable of choosing their classes just like they are now. We would like to influence that decision in a way that allows them to learn a skill by which they can live.
Yeah, but wouldn't you want them to be more well-rounded, though, not just one skill specifically? I mean...
So the problem is either too much specialization or not enough specialization. As things become more and more complex, we wind up requiring education within those fields at a younger and younger age.
Are we in the world of Fallout?
That is just the consequence of becoming a high-technology society. Eventually, we will have everybody learning calculus as their first math rather than basic addition and subtraction, just because it's no longer feasible to do so, and we figured out a way to do it.
I kind of feel like we're in Fallout where, like, every kid has to take the GOAT.
What?
Oh, there's an aptitude test that they use in that game where it's like they ask you all these questions to determine what you're going to do with your life. Do you remember when there used to be, I don't because I'm not old enough, but when there used to be like the resource counselor or whatever, the guidance counselor would tell you what job you're best suited to do or something like that?
Yeah, no, I'm not old enough for that either.
When did you graduate high school, Chair? If you don't mind my asking, you can type it in the side chat if you don't feel comfortable saying that.
1999.
I know that's identifiable information.
99.
Oh, damn. I'm young.
I know, I'm an old geezer.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, don't hate.
96. I'm old.
Yeah, and like, it was... We do have standard testing sort of in Canada, but it's not quite the same. Like, they don't really do the SAT thing, which is surprising, I know, but I don't know. I forget what the test is called that they give us, but so long. When I did 1 year of college, I had a government loan in order to do college, and then I switched programs partway through the year, and then they cut my funding. I was in electronics engineering, though.
I only did a year of college because at the same time I was supporting my mother and my sister and, paying bills and stuff. So I ended up paying more attention to that. And when I would go to school, I was just hanging out at the smoke break table. I only paid attention to the classes I liked, which were uh, my early childhood education classes and psychology.
Yeah, see, I was like that in high school as well. I hated being forced to go there because I didn't have a choice in the classes I could take. I had no problem going to school. I didn't want to stay there because they wouldn't let me do what I wanted.
What year
I'm not
did
saying
you
that we take away the
graduate?
choice of the students. We should give them choices,
What
but
year
we
did
should
you
make it.
graduate?
I graduated in 2010.
Well, then the schools you went to are weird because I went to a lot of different schools, but every high school that I went to, there were electives. Like you got to determine your classes once you hit high school.
Right, but okay, it depends on what you're defining as an elective and whether or not your counselor will allow you to do that.
What my counselor didn't get a say in it when I went to school, and there were a lot of different electives. I did a multimedia class in one of my high schools where we were learning 3ds Max and AutoCAD. I got to build the world and blow it up. It was great. I had a humanities class. I was on the newspaper. I actually got to do part of an early childhood education class in one of my schools as well. Like there were tons of electives. You could choose to do anything you wanted off of that.
See, when I went to high school, it was different because I transferred from one school to the other mid-semester my freshman year, and they had me taking different standards. Yeah, different states. I was taking junior classes in my freshman year, and then I had to completely redo my schedule, and then I said fuck it and gave up.
Yeah, in high school, all my school changes were within the same state, but I went to 4 different high schools, but I changed high schools 8 times.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't be able to like graduate if that was the case. But what I'm getting at is quite simply this. If we give students the ability to learn specific skills, because math and science are skills. You can use science. You can improve your understanding and you can change your environment using it. It's not about like indoctrinating them. It's not about communism, because I saw some comments in the chat. It's about ensuring that we have a generation who is capable of affecting the world in such a way that it reflects their values, because everybody lives by the values of the previous generation. If we allow that generation to become more self-sufficient and self-sustaining through math and science skills, whether it's programming in order to streamline everything that they need, or whether it's actual chemistry so they can become, world-class bioorganic chemists. I mean, we have a massive pool of people who can do so much.
I think what you want already exists in some states. My state, you could pick from one of 5 different paths going through high school, where you could pick one that geared everything towards engineering. Another one would gear all your courses towards computer programming. You take English classes, but have computer programming involved in the English class. And then also you could take college classes in high school instead of your regular classes if you're beyond.
I think we should have as many people in that as possible, and that's going to require all kinds of different changes and all that stuff.
But there's also sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's just that there's also many online school options. There are actually technical high school options for kids who decide that they just want to focus on this one career path. Like there's all kinds of options for that kind of thing, and all of it voluntary. You don't have to mandate anything and take the rights away from the parent or the child in order to have this implemented. It's already there.
I didn't have that option when I was in high school.
Or maybe you weren't allowed. Maybe you weren't given the chance to know that.
Yeah,
because
maybe
parents hold things like that back.
Illinois, when I was in high school, that wasn't a thing.
Well, then your issue is an issue within your state. It's a state's rights issue.
Or when he was going through, possibly. I think what you can have what you want for society, without having to take away the right of the parent to choose what education their kids are getting.
Yes, you absolutely can. If you're arguing anything, it's maybe just that your state needs to be better, and maybe certain states need to be better handled when it comes to their public school system, it sounds, more so than homeschooling.
I think we all
Real
agree
quick.
that we need more education in our society. I think we all can agree on that, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, I can agree with that. Real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt. Before we continue, I would like to go ahead and do our shout out. Joining us this evening in this wonderful and rousing debate is AircraftSparky. If you guys look, we had AircraftSparky on earlier, I think it was last week, for our debate, and he did an excellent job defending the prospect of peace in North Korea. And for that, Sparky, we thank you. You did an excellent job. We didn't ask, did you keep the money or did you donate it to charity?
I donated it to a veterans charity.
Okay, would you like to go ahead and give the charity a plug?
I actually gotta look up the name now. God, you put me on the spot. I wasn't even looking for that because I'm kind of quiet about that kind of stuff. But yeah, give me a moment.
Well,
Was it
any
Project 21?
something that we try to do.
Oh well, it's Kill 22.
Kill 22. Sorry.
Yeah. Because there's a huge problem with suicide amongst veterans. I'm a veteran.
Yeah.
I suffer from PTSD, and I have buried way too many of my brothers and sisters from mental problems. So I usually donate to Kill 22 because I'm not a big fan of the Wounded Warrior Project just because of their general overhead costs for operating. But they're both great programs. I prefer Kill 22 a little bit more.
There's a direct correlation to the more well-known a charity is to its overhead.
Yes, and to Wounded Warrior Project, to their deal, they do a lot more advertising. They do a lot more public relations,
Yes.
and that costs a lot more money. And I've seen them help a lot of great people. But no, I added $70 to my winnings and donated $100 to Kill 22.
All right. Well, thank you so much, AircraftSparky. You are an awesome dude, and you did an awesome job. And we hope to see you on the Academy Debate Show in the future.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, with that out of the way, did we want to go ahead and continue the conversation, change to another topic?
Shouldn't we plug for a couple other people in the hangout first?
Yeah, let's just get the shilling all over with for everybody, including the other show on Friday. So
I'm only shilling for the Illuminati by this point.
because AmandaWolfChild doesn't get enough people watching her stuff, I don't think so.
Let's go ahead and get feeling out of the way.
I don't know. I don't make enough stuff, I guess. I'm actually working on a video at the moment, though. Hopefully I'll finish it and get it out because it's a mental health awareness week. So I'm actually, writing out a video about my anxiety as a kid and how I've dealt with it my whole life without any meds. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and I like those kind of videos where people talk about their personal experiences, It's better than the usual stuff that some people talk about, so yeah.
Well, I do want to kind of get back to, responding to videos.
Okay.
It's just, I got to get Yoda to do this one with me. I want to do another Pop and Ollie, and our last Pop and Ollie was freaking hilarious.
Oh my god, that show is so horrible.
Cringeworthy.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, well, I'll just say about the Academy that we're gonna have we have our debate on the Friday nights as well, and so that's gonna be at 8 p.m. Central, and on what our topic is on Friday is we're going to be discussing, like I said, investment in college, whether or not tuition fees, how they are, if it's worthwhile. I guess it kind of relates to what we're talking about tonight, sort of, but yeah. So tune in for that one. You guys should enjoy it. And other than that, I don't have any qualms about continuing or changing topic. I don't have a preference. I think the chat is enjoying our conversation so far. So.
Shill for DireWolf too. DireWolf.
I know he can do that.
DireWolf, please.
All right. Yep. DireWolf from DireWolf Media. I have my own channel, and I do with Clyde. We do a Saturday night news recap at 2200 Eastern Standard Time. I'm actually TDY right now, and because of that, we'll be having Foxy, the Wary Fox, fill in for me with Collides. The two of them will be going over the stories. I actually was doing the research for them when I got your guys' link.
Wow.
Sorry about that.
No,
You're actually able to stream while downrange. That's awesome.
TDY.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm in the States,
Oh, okay.
just not at home base.
What branch, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't say just because it narrows it down. I'm gonna get docs eventually, but I want to make it easy.
Fair enough. Well, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
One vet to another. So
Thank you for your service.
got me out of the house, brother. Got me out of the house.
See the world, they said.
Meet new and interesting people and kill them.
Okay, and then I think we've got one more plug if nobody else has a plug that they would like to do, since we're doing our shameless shilling at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, so a friend of mine runs the Fake Podcast, and if you guys are interested, I've been invited onto it. So tune in. Eventually, I'll be on it, and that sounds interesting. It's usually Sundays, 4 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. I think it's Pacific Standard now.
Okay. Yeah. We've talked to him a few times, and he's got a really cool show. So.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good guy.
Yep, he is. So yeah, I think we're pretty much winding down at this point. So that's what it seems like anyway. Unless you guys have more to add on the topics that we were talking about, or a new one.
My only thing about the whole parental, I believe in parental rights. I mean, I'm big on, I think children need vaccines, but if the parents don't want their children to get vaccines, I support that too. Mm-hmm. I think people need to realize that the more you allow for the macro to determine morality and everything else, the less freedoms that you have overall. You see a lot of crazy things going on, and there are certain things that, honestly, I personally don't want my children taught.
Yeah.
And I think that parents should have that ability. And I hold some very, very bad opinions in a social context.
So, sex ed aside.
Well, sex ed, honestly, I don't really care about. I don't believe that we should be normalizing deviancies of certain types. I don't believe that we should be normalizing mental health issues. I don't think that we should be otherizing them, but I don't think that we should have to play into the delusions of others. I don't buy into the whole PC thing. I always told I taught my son, be kind, don't be an asshole, but don't believe everything someone tells you just because it makes them feel better either.
Right, and that I can't really argue against, but we're not talking about teaching them morality. We're talking about teaching, like, I know that I've said this before, but
schools,
that's not.
They teach morality. If you do not subscribe to a particular thing, you said, oh, well, if you believe that the earth is only 6,000 years old, you're missing a fundamental truth. Well, I'm not a big religious person, but I believe in religious rights, and I can't sit there and say, hey, if you're a hardcore Christian and you believe the earth is only 6,000 years and it was only created in 7 days, I don't think that's really hurting much.
But so wouldn't you prefer, though, that your kids get exposed to all viewpoints? I mean,
well, no, I have no problem with them being exposed to all viewpoints. However, there is a certain point where you're just like, no, you're not going to teach this as fact. Like, I'm not sorry a bit. I do not buy into Darwinism's, theory of evolution. I am a creationist.
I would love to talk to you about this.
But why can't you talk to your kid about those things outside of the school system? Like,
You can.
if they're exposed to
But
that,
the deal is, you have these schools pushing these ideas that are unproven theories down their throat.
I would
as
absolutely
facts.
love to talk to you
I
about
think you misunderstand what the word theory means in a scientific context, but that's another debate for another show.
Yeah, let's hold this off for a debate.
I understand what theory means in a scientific context.
Hey, Sparky,
Yo.
can we have a stream later where we talk about evolution? I would absolutely love to talk to you about that.
That's fine.
I will agree with Sparky, though, on the fact that I don't think you should be able to constitute it as abuse if a parent teaches their child creationism. Like, if that's part of their religion. I don't think that constitutes
That's
abuse.
not abuse. I think the A word is used way too often.
A word?
Yeah, abuse. Everything's abuse these days.
So
for Christ's
is it
sakes.
abuse to withhold legitimate scientific truths from your children?
Like, I think you should be able to be like, okay, the school is teaching you this, but you know, when you're talking with your kids, I think a parent shouldn't be like, oh, our family believes this. It should be, well, if you're talking God, let's say, or evolution or whatever, you say, well, personally, I don't believe in it, but I want you to be able to learn about stuff yourself and then make your own decisions about what you believe in. Like,
But at the same time, isn't that ultimately the parent's decision to make?
Guys.
if the kid's 5, sure.
I would love to watch this debate, but I think this is probably not the right time, right?
I agree. I think that this
Yeah.
would be better for a separate
Alrighty.
one that I'm very excited for if you do decide that you would like to, and if we wind up making this happen, but for a
I would
different one nonetheless.
totally join in on that one. as
so
well.
Okay.
let's simplify the issue of whether this is abuse or not. Say you have someone teaching children in public, teaching children that the Earth is flat.
Okay.
What about that?
Yeah, I don't think that would constitute as abuse either. If a flat earther teaches their child that they believe the Earth is flat.
Yeah, I don't really think it's abuse. I think it's ignorant. But I mean,
Yeah. I mean, no, I think you as a parent have every right to make your kid
yeah.
be ignorant in the same way you are, if that's what you decide. And your kid has the right to grow up and learn information and change their mind once they are an adult and making their own decisions.
Ride a plane just once.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly.
dude, I'm an aviation guy. I get it. You know, I mean, hell, watch a boat just travel and see how far it takes for it to disappear. It gets
Hell,
small.
And watch how it disappears.
Yeah.
Because it disappears, it sinks slowly beneath the horizon. It doesn't all go at once.
I was 5 and just looking up at the sky on an almost cloudless day, and that's how I realized that the Earth is round. Like, you could see it.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that are taught. I mean, even like with history, that people don't realize that they're taught wrong.
That is absolutely true with history.
I mean,
So
here's one of the biggest misconceptions taught in America today. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves with the Emancipation Proclamation. That is the biggest crock of shit I've ever heard.
And they still teach in schools that Christopher Columbus discovered America.
Yeah.
no, they don't.
Oh, well, they still did when I was in school, I should say.
It's, you know, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves in the Confederate States, not in the Union States, because if he would have freed the slaves in Kentucky, Virginia, and the other Union states that actually had slaves, there wouldn't be no Union left. So, no, he did not free the slaves, but they still teach these kind of lies and garbage in school.
So
Yes.
historical mistakes aside, should somebody who is of an extreme religious faith be allowed to teach bigotry toward another religious
Yes,
faith,
unfortunately, I don't agree with their bigotry, but yes.
even if that bigotry results in violence?
Well, I mean, the violence makes you
Ideas-
become responsible for your actions.
Yeah.
That's totally different.
Ideas
So-
do not make violence the individual using that ideology. It's the individual's responsibility when it comes to violence enacted.
How can
Speech
the
in and of
individual
itself.
take responsibility if he doesn't know any other way?
Well, if a child commits that kind of violence, it is the parent's responsibility.
Yes.
That parent taught him. Once they become an adult, though, that responsibility falls on the individual.
So when does someone become an adult?
According
our
to the
society, we
U.S.,
read
18.
I don't know. In the
25,
U.S. society, I
30.
understand that, but we're talking an extremely sheltered person in a part of the world that's cut off from essentially all of modern technology in any meaningful way. Vast swathes of the Middle East still don't even have electricity.
And I mean, they're strapping bombs on kids. So
Yeah.
Now, that is intergenerational hatred that's been taught and resulted essentially in perpetual war.
It's
We don't
still
allow that in
the-
our society.
look at Indonesia, right?
Should we
like-
allow that? Should we
It's
allow that
not-
in any kind of society?
It's not that we don't allow that in our society. We actually absolutely do. You could teach your kid whatever you want, but because our society has such free and open information, because it is so easily accessible, it is fairly easy, even for children who are raised to be, say, massive racist bigots their entire life. You see them become adults, get
It's
some
not-
information, meet people, and their minds change.
We
It's not
live
that
in a
easy.
society.
Syria. What if you're in Syria? It's not that easy.
Life sucks.
Yeah,
I mean,
you can't shift the goalpost to another country. We're talking about things here or in an America-like country. That's how this.
if you're in an America-like country, then you have to look and go, okay, it's going to be similar technologically and everything else.
But let's face it, if we're talking about like Islamic indoctrination, like most of that is not happening in the U.S. So that's why I brought up.
You'd be amazed; it's actually on the rise in the U.S.
That's why Dearborn is nicknamed Dearbornistan.
Yeah, it is actually becoming a deal in America right now. But part of the problem is, honestly, I believe that some of it is the over acceptance. You can only say everything is good for so long before you see a moral decay of society.
But that's not what we're
But
suggesting here.
That's what you just alluded to with Dearborn.
No. What I'm saying
That
is
goes back to the cultural
Yes.
relativism that we were talking about earlier.
Right.
But as far as when you allow anything to be taught to a child that a parent does not agree with, the parent ultimately has a responsibility for the raising of that child, and to have society determine what is good, bad, or indifferent for that child is taking away the freedoms of that family. It is imposing their will. It is a form of indoctrination. It doesn't matter if you agree with their indoctrination or not, you are still indoctrinating.
And at a certain age, a child should be able to learn themselves and decide for themselves what they believe or don't believe.
Yes.
So hang on.
Once
Do
they
we
hit teenagers, right?
hang on. Do we in the United States think 18 is a legal adult?
We do.
Yes.
Okay. Do we in the United States generally accept that a human brain has not fully developed until approximately the age 25?
Yes.
But that's on average.
But the thing
The average
is,
carries over a vast swathe of the population. We know that there are obvious exceptions, and the general breaks down at the level of the individual.
but hey, that's the thing is, that's why you see that we kind of graduate adulthood. Like you become a legal adult at 18, but then you can buy alcohol at 21. I mean, we start even graduating them into adulthood before they actually reach the legal age of 18, with you begin to make decisions like driving and things like that.
Yeah.
So real
And we
quick,
still-
if I may.
Yes.
Well, hold on, I'm not quite done. But we still, even after they've reached 18, we give them a leverage, a bit of leeway in things. They are still considered a very young adult until they have reached 25, or at least around that age when we expect them to be fully adult in their actions and thinking.
So sorry, go ahead.
There's been some studies that have shown that on average, 80% of the development of the brain was it was either 15 or 16. It's developed by those age. And by age 18, you're far further along, and the amount left to develop between age 18 and age 25 is a relatively small amount. What they have developed are the ability to understand the consequence for their actions and make moral judgments. And that's why they say at age 18, even though your brain's not fully developed, you've developed enough to make adult decisions.
And
So-
that is even put with an asterisk next to it, because in most states, if you're 13 years old and commit the crime of murder,
Who is
you're still
clicking?
charged as an adult.
Sorry, somebody is clicking when they talk.
Is it me?
No.
It's not
Is
me.
anybody
It's,
wearing a lapel pin, like a lapel mic?
Oh no!
Oh, I am. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I'll hold it away.
Okay, sorry. It's been going this whole time. It just drives me nuts.
Yeah, I mean, what we call an adult is really determinant on what we are measuring it against. If it is a moral injustice such as murder or rape, a child can be charged as an adult in some states as early as 12 or 13.
Okay.
Can I
I
take
think
it back?
that's a good point, and I think there's something I would like to comment on the irony, though. What I'm arguing is not a relativistic position. What I'm arguing is a universalist, more or less objective. It factors in certain specific factors of each culture that this could be applied to. By saying that the rights of the parents are more important, you're allowing for multiple moral systems, moral levels of moral reasoning to be taught as objective truth in a society that believes that there is an objective truth and is their truth.
Hey, the Academy
In
wants us
America, there is no objective truth, no objective moral truth.
But there is no objective moral truth. There absolutely is not.
The Academy wants us to start winding down the topic, so let's go into a whole new area and talk for another 2 hours.
Yeah.
Actually, guys, I did rather enjoy this, but that is an excellent point. We have been going for 2 hours, and it's a little longer than I had initially planned. I'm sure we all have things we'd like to do. Let's put a pin in this, and perhaps we can have future discussions. Maybe not necessarily on Dolphin's show, because this was just a stand-in. And Dolphin, thank you so much for not having us cancel it. And I'm sorry that you're not feeling well. Please get better soon.
Oh, feel better, Dolphin.
Yeah, we need you next week.
Yeah, because this pretty quickly spiraled out of control. Not that it was a bad thing, but
Things
think we should
usually
go
get
ahead and-
fun when I'm around. Ask Dyer.
I don't think it was out of control at all. I thought it was actually pretty good. We all stayed respectful and everything else, and we kind of proved tonight. Like I'm glad that we were able to show that you can still disagree on stuff and still be friendly and jovial and
It's about being civil.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So with that, we're gonna go ahead and wish everybody a fond farewell. Have a good night, and if you're drinking, don't drive, and if you're driving and drinking, pull over.
Yep, and please like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe if you haven't yet.
DireWolf.
Thanks.
Yes,
Night,
everybody's
night,
links
everyone.
will be in the description as
I
well
will
as.
make sure of it. Okay, bye everybody.